requesting me to do a deck tech on, and I feel pretty confident doing one on this list. It is another best of one list, and this time we're doing it on Raedyn Red. This is a very unique mono red deck, more of a combo style mono red deck with a little bit of burn in it, but I wouldn't say it's full burn here. But yeah, we'll hop into it. As you can see, two very unique cards on the title slide. So let's go in. So quick overview, we're going to go over the deck list, a little bit of advice I have on how to play the deck, what the combos are in the deck, and then run through the matchups and my conclusion and my personal opinion on the deck. So the deck list itself, it's, as you can look, it looks like a burn list, and it's pretty much, I'd classify it as burn, but it's a lot different than a normal burn list. It plays very differently. So the way it works is we're playing 4 Pillar Flame and 4 Shocks. That's 4 1-drop burn spells. That's a lot of damage. And then we have Soul Scar Mage there, just as a quick 1-drop to maneuver in for chip points of damage on the early turns. In the 2-drop slot, we have the normal 8 cards you see for burn, Lightning Strike and Thermo Alchemist. Obviously, the Thermo Alchemist combo with any instant and sorcery, a lot of people know. But the one people really don't know is Electrostatic Field. Electrostatic Field is a 0/4 defender that has the ability that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to your opponent. The reason why that's important is it combos off with our big 2 combo finishers there, Chandra Spitfire and Chandras Incinerator, or if you're going more the burn route, it allows you to get in for extra points of damage with your burn spells. So very important. Then in our 3-drop slot, we got Chandra Spitfire. This card is insanely good. If your opponent lets it live past your 3rd turn, you most likely will win the game. It is an unreal finisher. However, if it dies or your opponent has a flyer out, it's a bit of a toss-up. Light up the stage here as a 3 of instead of a 4, just so that way you can get card draw and kind of allow more slots for lands and burn spells. Skewer the Critics, awesome 1-drop lightning bolt basically in our deck, considering all the burn spells we have and the ways to ping our opponent for 1 with Thermo and Electrostatic Field. And Volcanic Fallout here is a unique addition due to a lot of the best of 1 meta having a lot of goblins and small creature decks. Volcanic Fallout can really just blow up the field and really just punish your opponent. And by the way, all our creatures survive a Volcanic Fallout hit, which is super important here, and that's why it's just a great card in this matchup. Next, I tested it out as a 4-drop. Felt a little bit too clunky to be a 4-drop. However, as a 2-drop, it is an amazing card, Chandras Incinerator. This card I felt like was a little bit of a dead card at first when it came out. However, it is just a beast of a card. Being able to play this on turn 3 after you hit your opponent for 5 allows it to drop early. So the way Chandras Incinerator works is whenever you deal non-combat damage to an opponent, it costs X less to cast. So if I were to shock and lightning strike my opponent in a turn, that's 5 damage. My Incinerator would only cost 1 red mana. That is insanely important, and to get a 6-drop out there is awesome. Also, if we have our 2-drop spells out like Electrostatic Field and Thermo Alchemist, and we're able to ping our opponent for damage, most of the time we can clear our opponent's board because Chandras Incinerator states whenever we deal damage to an opponent, non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandras Incinerator deals that much damage to a target creature an opponent controls. Majority of the time, you can just wipe the board with it, just due to the vast amount of burn spells we have. So awesome card. Don't think it's great as a 4 of. As a 2-drop, it feels just fine. On the lands, we went with 17 Mountains and 4 Ramunap Ruins just to make sure we always hit our 3-drop curve. And then Ramunap Ruins, obviously, as a finisher if a game goes a little bit mid-rangey. So how did I get this deck list? So this isn't my own brewing. This was reverse engineered from a player known as Raedyn 3. He was the former #1 player on the ladder. I believe now he is in the 400/500 range, but earlier in the month when I first made the Mythic ladder, I constantly faced Raedyn. I am actually 0-6 against Raedyn. He's insanely good, and this is a very unique brew he has. More of a combo burn deck, and it's awesome. Obviously, this list is really only meant for best of ones. This list would really struggle in best of threes, even having a sideboard. It would just feel very, very clunky. So one of the best things here is it's super important to hit a third land drop. Spitfire and Incinerator, you really can't get out if you don't have a third land drop. So hitting that third land drop is just insanely important. One of the downsides of the deck I really started noticing when I played it was you tend to get very clunky hands. Sometimes I'll get a hand with just Soul Scarred Mage and all burn spells. Sure, that's okay, but we don't really have a combo finisher or a combo piece. And sometimes I'll just get all creature hands. So I'll get 3 lands and a Thermo Alchemist, an Electrostatic Field, and an Incinerator. So sometimes you just get some of these clunky hands that force you to mulligan, and this deck tends to struggle a bit more on the mulligans compared to some of the other red decks in the format. However, when you are able to get a really good combo hand in your opener, usually it feels really good. And most of the time, you're able to win the game as long as your opponent doesn't have hand removal, which is another thing we'll get into. But it's still a pretty good list. Just sometimes you gotta be wary of clunky hands you can get. The nice thing about this list is majority of the time you win turn 4. The reason why I say that is turn 1 you can go land into holding up or burn spell. Turn 2 you can play Electrostatic Field or Thermo Alchemist. Turn 3 you play Chandra Spitfire or Incinerator if you combo off. And if your opponent doesn't deal with our major threats, we're majority of the time swinging in for game off combo finishes with the 2-drop burn, combo creatures, and our burn spells and our finisher. So this deck is insanely fast. Probably the fastest red deck I've seen. However, like I said, this deck does have some flaws. You can get some clunky hands, or if your opponent's playing removal, majority of the time you can't. It's very hard to build up after removal, or if they kill our combo creature, it's basically game over at that point. And Thoughtseize decks just destroy this list as they're able to take out our combo finishers or our combo enablers or just burn spells we need. So be a little bit wary of that. I think it is very good in the meta right now. Obviously, you can't make Mythic with a bad deck. So it does catch the meta off guard. However, there are some bad matchups. And this, like I said, this deck, when it is able to combo off, is the fastest deck, I think, in the format. When it's not, it feels really bad. And that's the hard part for me on this list. It feels very 50-50. But overall, I think it's a very good list if you're in the lower ranks and you're trying to climb up to get to Mythic. I definitely think this is a best of one list that if you really put in the time and effort to learn and play, you can make Mythic with it. I've played with it in Mythic. I have a little bit over a 50% win rate with this list. I prefer my other list, but this is still a really good list, even in the Mythic top player range. So let's get into some of the matchups. Oh, combos, my bad. Let's get into the combos. So I already mentioned a few. These are your main 3. Chandra Spitfire plus your burn spells or 2-drop creatures. So if you have a Thermo Alchemist out and you have Spitfire out and it's turn 4 and you got 3 burn spells in hand, you win the game. The reason why is every time Thermo Alchemist pins your opponent for 1, Chandra Spitfire gets +3/+0. So then it goes to 4-0. Then you use a burn spell. Then it goes to 7-0. Then you use it again. And it's at 10 power already off 2 Alchemist activations and a burn spell. And most of the time after a burn spell and Alchemist, your opponent's already around, let's say 15, and if you're lucky, 13 or 11 if they have shock lands, and you just win the game right there. Also, a lot of decks right now aren't playing creatures with reach, so you can just win off that. The other one is a turn 3 combo we've seen, which is dealing 5 points of damage to the face at our opponent, Pillar Flame plus Skewer, Thermo Alchemist plus Lightning Strike, however you want to do it, and then playing Incinerator on turn 3. Majority of the time, I just see opponents scoop the second Incinerator hits, but if they don't, like I said, you can just use burn spells at face or use your 2-drops at the face, and Incinerator just wipes the board and clears in for 6 points of damage. The other way that doesn't involve Incinerator or Spitfire, and I have won games doing this, they're a little bit slower, but it still happens, is utilizing those 2-drop creatures, Electromagnetic Field and Thermo Alchemist, to just keep pinging your opponent, plus burn spells, and it just overall that chip points of damage of 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 on top of our 2 to 3 points off burn spells does just win the game. So those are the 3 main combos we'll be referring to in this video. First matchup, Elves. I consider this a really great matchup for us. The trick is you just got to outrace your opponent. Most of the time, our opponents take a while to develop and get their lords out. And most of the time, they're not attacking in for a lot. And usually, we have our 2 drops out to really block. The only thing I'll say here is be careful of Collected Company. If they got 4 mana up and you haven't killed them by turn 4, just be careful. They could Collected Company into some combo pieces to win the game. So be a little bit wary of that and try to hold up removal if they do that. The next one is just send all your bolts at your opponent. The reason being is in this deck, we're not trying to clear the board for creatures to get through. We're just trying to hit our opponent and count to 20 as fast as possible. And majority of the time, this deck doesn't play life gain. So just being able to combo off with our bolts and our 2 drops, Spitfire, Incinerator, we just win the game. Also, a really, really cool card in here is Volcanic Fallout. Against the tribal decks, it does insanely well. It kills all their mana dorks, and majority of the time, it kind of ruins their Lord combos and Lord interactions. So, overall, this is a great matchup, and we'll move on to the next one. Mono Black Aggro. This is a really tough one for this deck. Reason being is this deck tends to play some Death Touch and Lifelink creatures. Which means we really can't block with our 2-piece combos, and they're able to attack and gain life. Tends to be a bit of a problem for this list, but we do get around it with some combos. The other thing is Phyrexian Obliterator here is an absolute beast, as most of the time when we have Incinerator out, we can't do anything with it. However, Spitfire can get over it. So got to be very careful about that. Also, these lists play Hand Disruption. I've seen lists play Duress and Thoughtseize. And when they do that, they usually just go after our combo pieces. As in this scenario, Spitfire is the best combo to beat them, as Spitfire just allows us to get over the top and deal damage. But whenever they're able to play their life gain and stuff, and this deck plays removal spells too, they're just able to deal with our main combo finishers. And unfortunately here, the 2-drop combo creatures just aren't fast enough. So if you can, try and hold out for the combo finish with Spitfire. That's just really hoping our opponent doesn't have a good hand. But overall, this is a really, really tough matchup. You have to get a bit lucky not encountering removal and Thoughtseize. Next matchup is Goblins. This is really familiar really familiar and really similar to the Elves matchup. The strategy here is when they do play Skirk Prospector, kill it. Use one of your cheaper burn spells on it, as Incinerator allows them to combo into Muxus early, which we don't want to deal with. Also, utilize those 2 drops we have. Thermo Alchemist and the Field are a 0/3 and a 0/4. Their creatures usually don't get that big early on, which allows us to prevent a little bit of chip damage they usually try to get in for on early turns. Also, Volcanic Fallout, dealing 2 to their board, just wipes their board the majority of the time. This deck plays a bunch of cheap 1/1s, and they only have 1 Lord in the list that really gives their creatures a buff, and even when they do, the buff isn't enough. So Volcanic Fallout here is just awesome. Also, our opponents usually just can't outrace any of our combos. Even the 2-drop combos, just the amount of times I've had a board of just 4 of our 2-drop creatures out and just going bolt to the face. In that scenario, you're dealing like 8 damage. Usually, a lightning strike plus 4 of those is 3 plus 2 plus 4. That's 9 damage. So think about that. You got 2 of those, you just win the game usually. So usually we're able to outrace them before they get Muxus out. So I really like this matchup, and usually Goblins just don't have a way to interact with it. Even with Gen Palm, Incinerator, it's a little too slow for Goblins to beat us. The next one, Soul Sisters. Soul Sisters is really, really good. Here you have to kill their low drop mana creatures early, as they are the enablers for their life gain. Soul Warden, if that card ever hits the battlefield, just kill it. It is way too good against us. The other thing to be wary of is this list does play flyers, so they are able to deal with the Spitfire combo. Like I said, don't be afraid to use your burn spells on creatures here, as we just have to try and maintain the board away from allowing them to gain life. Volcanic Fallout is really good here because a lot of their creatures are small. They play low drop creatures to try and gain early life, and by being able to kill those low drop creatures and low power and toughness creatures, we're able to clear a board and provide damage off the 2-drop creatures we have. Like I said here, you got to utilize the combos you have when you can, though. Spitfire here, like I said, does not that great, but I think Incinerator does amazing in this matchup. So Incinerator here is really good. And yeah, even the 2-drop creature combos plus burn spells is usually good. It's just really hard to outrace our opponent here because usually they need 25 or more life to really get going. So as long as we can keep them off 25 life, this matchup is usually winnable. If they're able to hit 25 or more, it's a little bit tougher. So I consider this a 50-50 matchup overall. The next deck we have is Azores Auras. I think right now Auras is pretty good. I think there's some flaws with the list right now. I didn't do well this weekend in the Mythic Invitational. That's for another video. But what you have to do here is you have to kill the and you got to kill the Vanguard. Those are the 3 creatures they use to really stack their enchantments on and really get going. Also, Skullscar Mage's counters is insanely good for just kind of dealing damage. I've explained it in the past, but Skullscar Mage can usually get a free 4 points of damage on our opponent. Having a Soulscar Mage out and then using one of our burn spells on a Danto's Vanguard, a lot of opponents will pay the 4 life, which in return they don't realize also kills. So we're usually able to get a free 4 points of damage out of that. The other thing, Volcanic Fallout, as long as their creatures don't have auras equipped to them, Volcanic Fallout usually just wipes the board. Also, it kills their protection creatures. They're 1/1 protection creatures, so that's really, really good. Same thing with Incinerator. Incinerator is actually really, really good at dealing with their big enchantment creature, as just dealing damage to the face and damaging their enchanted creature just allows us to really just chip in for damage over time, which is awesome. Spitfire, also really, really good here. The deck only plays Ornithopter and then the 1 enchantment that gives it flying. So as long as you're able to get rid of those, Spitfire can usually just win the game. Also, you can't let Lurrus sit out. If Lurrus hits, just kill it. It allows them to get too many enchantments out of the graveyard or too many of their protector creatures out. So just kill Lurrus when it drops. But other than that, I think this is a really, really good matchup. I have it as 75-25. Sometimes we just get those clunky hands. But yeah, I think this is a pretty decent matchup for this list. Next is Mono Green Aggro. So utilize those 2 drops we have early for blockers. They tend to play Pel Collector, Burkhide Troll, and stuff. We have 2 drops there that are able to kind of defend those creatures. So that's kind of nice. Utilize those. Also, this deck just isn't able to stop our combo finish at all. So the game plan's just super, super simple. Keep the combo hands and mulligan to them if you don't get them out the bat. This deck doesn't really play any removal. Sometimes they play the X green card that allows them to deal damage to a creature. That's really the only removal I really see this list ever have. So usually our combos are just too quick, and if you get a Spitfire out and you have a 2-drop out and you got burn cards in hand, you literally just win the game, as usually they do not have reach cards that are able just to deal with the amount of damage we're able to put out. And like I said, even those small 2-drop combos are really, really quick, as these decks kind of rely more on a mid-rangey game. So I consider this a pretty good matchup. I'd probably put it at 85-15. So next list, Mono Green Walkers. This is a tough one, actually. Here you got a combo off by turn 4 or 5. This deck is able to ramp out very, very fast, which is a little bit scary. And it plays Platinum Angel, which we also have a little bit of a hard time dealing with. So it's a little bit tougher. don't get to my biggest thing I've learned after playing a bunch of matches against it is don't get distracted by the planeswalkers. If they got a Nissa out or they have a Karn out, don't go after him here. Unlike other lists with mono red, usually you go after the planeswalkers. Here you don't. This deck focuses on the combo finish the majority of the time. We're able to get over Karn and over the 3/3 elementals Nissa can create. So the idea here is Spitfire can finish the game, or those 2-drop combo pieces we have, the 2-drop creatures, the field and the Thermo Alchemist, just allow for some quick games. So the idea here is we have to combo off very, very quick before they're able to get their Planeswalker board set up. If they're able to get their board set up, this turns into a much harder match for us. So I put it at 50-50 just because I've really just learned how to now beat this list, beat mono green walkers with the list currently. But sometimes our deck is just a little too slow, or we don't get the combo pieces we need. So yeah, I consider it a bit of a 50-50. Next is rule aggro. This just comes to being able to outrace our opponent outracing us. Unfortunately, they do play a lot bigger creatures that are able to come out early. So we got to be a little bit careful there. Also, these lists tend to play removal, unlike the mono green lists. So be careful of Lightning Strike on our Thermal Alchemist or Spitfire, as that card usually is just able to deal with those two creature combos we have. Also, use the 2-drops early on turn 1 and 2 to defend a Pel Collector, Zuta. I can't pronounce it. It's the 3-drop. It's a 2-drop Gruul aggro card. And also, if they're able to build a board and they attack with 4 mana untapped, do place your blocks, because the majority of the time they will have an Embercleave ready to go, or they'll have a Collected Company. Most of the time it's Embercleave in these lists. So just be a little bit wary and ready for that. Overall, I think this is a 50-50 matchup. Questing Beast is able to do pretty well as well in this list, just to as we don't have creatures with power 2 or more really, so it just gets in for a free 4 majority of the time. So just be a little bit wary of this list. It's pretty good. However, sometimes we're just able to out combo them and be a little bit quicker. Spitfire is just an ultimate beast in that matchup. Oh. Next is Sultai Aero. So I think the Aero matchups are both really bad. So with Sultai Aero, the main problem is here we have to combo off before they get Aero out. Once they start getting Aero out and they get Aero out of the grave, they're just able to gain too much life and too much of an advantage for us to keep up with. This list also plays Thoughtseize, which really just kills our combo game. And then on top of that, it plays removal spells like Eliminate and Heartless Act. So it just gets rid of our combo pieces even when they hit the board. So this is a really difficult matchup for our list. If you can get Spitfire to stay on the board, you can win this game. But other than that, this is just an incredibly hard matchup for this list. I haven't beat an Aero deck yet with this list. I've had a lot more success with the other version of the red deck I play, but this is still just a very tough matchup for this list, because it's able just to deal with our combo pieces and get around the combo completely. Next, we got Bant/Aero control decks. Same thing here, except for we got to be careful of board wipes. Most of the time, they'll have a Wrath of God ready on turn 4 to deal with our combo. We literally just have to be able to out-combo them with this list. Also, this list plays a lot of counter spells, so they are able to counter a lot of our bolts, which kind of sucks. And then if it does go to more of a mid-range game, they do have the new Teferi, which just beats our combo finishers. So I know I have great matchup here. That's actually supposed to say bad matchup. That's my fault. This is actually a really bad matchup for our list, very similar to the Sultai one. Next is 9 Lives. This deck is starting to get really popular in the Mythic best of 1 ladder. So it's still a very difficult matchup for any red deck, especially this one. So the trick here is you got to be very aggressive, except you want to hold your burn spells in hand for when they do play 9 Lives. If you're able to kill them before 9 Lives come out, by all means be super aggressive. If you realize you can't, hold back those burn spells. The reason why is if they go turn 3, 9 lives, and you got one of your combo creatures out, let's say Thermo Alchemist, and 3 burn spells in hand, you're going to be able to ping your opponent for a decent amount, and with burn spells, which can destroy the 9 lives in response, even if you got, let's say, a Soulscar Mage out on turn 1. So got to be a little bit wary and careful of that. It's a very, very hard match just because we have no way of dealing with the combo until Red gets some enchantment removal, which will probably never happen. This is just an insanely, insanely hard matchup. We just have to outrace them by turn 4. If we're unable to do that, this matchup just kind of slips through our hand a bit. So yeah, next match is Ractos Pyromancer. This deck's kind of fading off. I expect a bit of a comeback after this past weekend with the way Luis Salvato played in the Mythic Invitational. But this matchup got a little bit better for Red, as I think it's a 50-50 matchup. The trick here is, like I said, you got to be super aggressive with the list. The only thing you really should ever use your burn spells on is Dreadhorde Arcanist. The reason being is that card allows them to get a lot of their cheap 1 mana drop cards that deal with our combo pieces early. So just always get rid of it if you can. Also, this list does play hand disruption, which isn't really good for our list as we're trying to maintain the cards in our hand for a combo finish. So be careful of Thoughtseize and Kroxa, as majority of the time it can really deplete our hand and set us back a bit, which tends to favor the Ractos list a little bit more. Also, if they get Lurrus out, kill it, as we don't want them getting Dreadhorde Arcanist back or their 5/5 Demon back from the 1-drop creature they play. The Spitfire combo here is really the main way of winning this game, I've learned. As long as they don't have the 5/5 Demon token out, usually Spitfire turn 4 can just combo off and win. Or you can go a little bit more of the grindy match with the 2-drop combos. Doesn't really happen as much. I've only had that happen once. But yeah, Spitfire is definitely the way to go in this list. It's like I said, it's a bit difficult, but I consider it 50-50 just due to the fact that majority of the time we're just able to outrace them, which is really, really nice. And the last list I believe we're going to go over today is Ractos/Jund Sacrifice. I've seen a bit of it now in Best of 1. It's a pretty annoying deck to deal with. It's pretty hard for this list, especially. The reason why is they have Priest of the False Gods, and what that allows them to do is sacrifice creatures, make us discard a card, lose 2 life, and sacrifice a creature. And like I said, our deck really relies on those combo pieces, so that's their way of getting rid of combo pieces. Plus, some of these lists play Thoughtseize, and the reason that really hurts our list is because Thoughtseize is able to just destroy our hand and set us back a couple turns. As we've seen, hand disruption just really, really puts our deck back a little bit. Also, I'll state here, Woe Strider is a major problem. With Roast Strider and Cat Oven combo and just other small little nuanced combos they have, they're able to gain life and they're able to deal damage to us. So it's a little bit more difficult for us to deal with. And they have Mayhem Devil, which is able to destroy our board a bit. So overall, it's a little tough, but if we are able to stick the combo on the board, it will win the game. I'd probably say 8 times out of 10. If we're able to get the Incinerator combo or the Spitfire combo off, the 2-drop combo just isn't good enough here. So one of those 2 combos are really the only way you're able to get out of this game. I also will say Volcanic Fallout is an all-star in this matchup, as it is able to wipe out majority of their board almost every time. This deck doesn't really play anything with 2 toughness or greater, except for Mayhem Devil. But other than that, I think this is a really near impossible matchup for this list. Just due to all the ways they're able to interact with our list. They play Claim the Firstborn, which can get some of our combo pieces out and then sacrifice it to Woe Strider or Oven. So it's a very, very, very hard matchup for this list. But like I said, sometimes you can get lucky and combo off. So just kind of want to go back to the deck list here and do a little bit of my personal opinion. Overall, this is a good list. Raedyn 3, like I said, he was the #1 player on the ladder for a while, and he's still in the top 1200 in Mythic. Being in the top 1200 in Mythic is no joke. It is insanely hard to do and insanely hard to maintain. So hats off to him. And I definitely appreciate playing him a bunch, so that way I could kind of take notes on the list and see what he does, and little nuances, and then play testing the deck a ton. So major shout out to Raedyn 3. I think the list is awesome, but like I said, I think it relies a little too much on these combo finishes, which can really set it back. And like I said, there's just some meta matches that just feel near impossible or just insanely difficult to deal with, that are really popular right now in the meta. So that's a little it's a little difficult, I think, right now to be playing this deck into that for me personally. However, for a lot of burn players that are struggling right now, I think this is your list to go to. From a burn standpoint, I think this list is way better than the traditional burn builds we've been seeing for the past month and a half, 2 months. I think it's just able to win games quicker, and you don't have to win off the combos, which is kind of nice. So overall, I think this is a really good list. Does it have its bad matchups? Yeah. Does it have its good matchups? Oh yeah. And then does it have really cool ways of winning? For sure. I think this deck has the coolest way of winning out of any red deck right now with Chandra Spitfire or Incinerator, which is just really cool and interactive to see. It's definitely um, outside of the box when it comes to thinking and play style. So I highly suggest, if you guys have the chance, please play it. The list doesn't require a lot of rares. If we're looking at it, it's a total of 8 rares. The rest of the list is just commons and uncommons. So if you're just getting into Magic the Gathering Arena, I highly suggest building this list if you want to try and learn how to play Burn and climb up the ladder, as this list is um, very easy to build with your wild cards, doesn't put a strain on them, and it's insanely good in the best of 1 meta right now. And especially if you're in, let's say, the lower ranks like a silver, gold, or platinum, this is definitely a list you can use in best of 1 to really climb out of those ranks and get a footing in historic. So overall, awesome list, awesome deck. Huge shout out to Raiden 3, like I said. And I really hope you guys are able to try this deck out and see if you guys have any other things, other little interactions with the deck against certain other matchups, um, cool combos you discovered, etc. Um, I really like this list for what it's done. Does it need a little bit of tuning and stuff? Yeah, for sure. Every deck does. Um, but other than that, I think this deck can do really well in the best of 1 meta. So if you have any questions or any other concerns you have on the list, feel free to leave me feedback. I'll provide advice for sure. But other than that, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I hope to hear back from you all soon. All right. Peace.